Let's everybody have a seat. We're ready to get today's program going. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ferky Ferrati, and I am the president of the Jefferson Educational Society. And it is an absolute honor to welcome you to a Brock Institute program celebrating one of our key institutions in our community. Right. I'm going to keep this really short because I am not the show, so I'm here to do a couple of announcements. First off, please put your phones on silence. You can still take pictures if you want, but you don't want to be the person that is, getting the attention in the middle of the lecture. So please put off your phones, shut them off or put them on silence. The other thing is Q&A. You should have gotten an index card and a pencil on your way in. If you did not and want to ask a question, raise your hand and somebody will bring that index card and a pencil to you. Please be mindful of your writing. We want Mr. Scully to get to as many questions as possible, but he needs to be able to read them. With that said, I thought about doing full intros and biographies, and I'm sorry, that would have taken the entire evening because we have three of the most extraordinary people here in Erie, Pennsylvania here with us. And we have, of course, our team member, the director of Brock Institute, Mr. Steve Scully. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage Mr. Thomas B. Hagen, Tim NeCastro, Marty Eisert, and Steve Scully.
Thank you all very much. Wow, this is a who's who of Erie, and I only wish that Charlie Brock were here today. He would be so proud of what you all represent and what this stage represents. Gentlemen, you need no introduction, but let's at the outset state the obvious, that great cities require great leaders. And you are three of the greatest leaders that this city has ever had in its history, and I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you. So we are going to talk about the history of Erie Insurance. We're going to talk about its origins, but Tim NeCastro, I want to begin with you, and let's talk about the next 100 years. You have had a lot of challenges, some climate change issues, some natural disasters, and some growing pains moving forward. So what will the next 100 years look like? What are the biggest challenges? What are the biggest opportunities?
Yeah, Steve, I think the number one thing for us is putting people first, and that's where our service orientation was born. H.O. Hirt talked about service. We're going to talk about it a lot today, I'm sure. But how do we serve tomorrow's employees and customers and get sales agents on board with our business model, which is kind of steeped in putting the people first. As I said, the human touch was extremely important to our founder. And there's a note, a replica of a note in my office that he left for his son Bill when he retired that talked about service and talked about the human touch. How do we navigate today's technological background and do it in a way that puts people first as opposed to eliminates people? And that's really the challenge that's in front of us that we're facing. We're embarking on a very ambitious modernization journey of our technology platforms to be able to give people greater flexibility and capability. But we always are doing that, making sure that when the moments really matter, there's a person there. You don't want to be on a cell phone pushing buttons, trying to navigate a website when your son has been involved in a car accident, or when your house is on fire, or any other horrific type of event occurs. Hail is blasted through your roof. That's when the human needs to be there. Not when you have to pay your bill, but when it matters, when you need advice or when you're in trouble. That's what people are buying from us.
So let me put one specific example on the table that you and your company have been dealing with. Hurricane Helene, $53 billion in damages, more than 120,000 homes damaged or destroyed, sadly about 100 lives lost. So how did Erie Insurance deal
with that catastrophe?
You know, the catastrophes are more widespread now than I can ever remember them being in my history with the company, almost 30 years. And what we do, what happens is really amazing at our company. We never like to see loss of life or loss of property, but when that happens, that's when our service really comes forward, and that's when we respond. That is the advertising that we do. That's why you don't see us on the Super Bowl or with cavemen or a bunch of other crap. We don't believe in that. We believe that people want a good, honest deal, and they want people to take care of them. And when we do that, our reputation just expands. For us, that was a 7,500 claim situation, predominantly in Virginia and North Carolina. About $175 million in losses were incurred. We no sooner made our way through that event than we had a $400 million event occur in Kentucky and parts of Tennessee and parts of Pennsylvania. Softball size hail, okay? No question whether storm chasers had to come in and find damage. Roofs were just completely destroyed on houses. And so, again, what happens is we deploy our CAT teams. We have people that are throughout the footprint. About 40 men and women are part of the catastrophe response team. That's their only job. And they swoop into the area in person, and then what happens afterwards is a cascade of service providers assemble. So we have protocols to set up contact centers to take incoming calls. We have protocols in the footprint where people are also taking calls, and we have agents stitched into that entire process. I'd like to say we have it down to a science, but the science varies depending on the nature of the event. And so the deployment can't occur until as soon as we find out how widespread the damage is. And luckily, through technology and being able to get drones into ravaged areas gives us a good picture of what we need to do. But we have CAT vans that go out there. We set up phone. We'll take a destroyed building and we'll paint our phone number on it and put Erie Insurance so people know in real big letters how they can get a hold of us. We are typically in and out of an area before many of our competitors even get there. And so that is where our reputation has come from.
Tom Hagen, let's bring you into the conversation. Your thoughts about the next 100 years and the challenges that you faced, even most recently, that Tim outlined.
The challenges that we're most recently facing, well, I leave that up to Tim and his crew to take care of, and they've done that in a really first-rate job. And, you know, I'd just like to underscore what Tim said about the value of the advertising, of responding quickly and with compassion with people. That's the best advertising in the world you can have. You can do all the liberty and gecko stuff that you want, but
we have a theme here.
But where it really comes down, where the rubber hits the road, is how you respond in a catastrophe or in any kind of event. And I'm so proud of the guys at Erie Insurance and how they have responded in these various catastrophes. More so, as Tim said, more so than we've seen in my lifetime, quite frankly, with Erie Insurance.
And Marty, you had a strong, long working relationship with H.O. Hirt. I thought the best way to kind of bring him and the origins of this great company into the conversation, my thanks to WQLN for their fabulous program. If you've not seen it, I have a couple of excerpts that I'm going to share with you, and here is one of them.
Along with the rise of the automobile in the early 20th century, society was shifting, shaking, shimmying into the roaring 20s. Mr. Hirt had found his Mrs. Hirt, the lovely Ruth Louise Peterson, and the two were preparing for their first child, Frank William Hirt. The industrial age was doing the city well. Manufacturing giants like GE, Hammermill, Griswold, Jarecki, and others kept the engines churning, after making them, of course. The two men's industry connections helped them bring in interest in their budding company. The likes of Hammermill's William Bromley and Ed Nick of Northern Equipment, and a variety of other manufacturers, wholesalers, and regional industry leaders filled out the board. But the two founders pulled in potential policyholders from the shop floors, too. And so, H.O. Hirt and O.G. Crawford set out to stake their own claim in the insurance industry. But with H.O.'s growing family, striking off into the challenges of entrepreneurship was a big risk. O.G. provided the push he needed.
I must give Mr. Crawford the chief credit. He had more nerve than I had. And it took a good deal of prodding on his part to get me moving along with him in carrying out his idea.
So, Marty, what did H.O. Hirt see in Erie and in the industry that now bears the Erie name a century later?
Service. Man was remarkable in his commitment to service. People sometimes think that it's a catchy thing to advertise service because so many companies do it, but it was never words with him. It was always action, and that's what he believed in. One little vignette, if I may. Towards the end of his stay, when I'd pick him up in the morning, particularly after a weekend, he would come out with some papers because people could call him at home and reverse the charges if they had a problem, complaint, or need for service. Now, what other company president could you do that with? And he'd come out in the morning with these, we're going to look into these, and look into them. He did. He handled each and every complaint singularly. Even if somebody would ask for somebody else in the organization to handle the complaint, it was an established fact that he would get the complaint and handle it personally. That's service, starts at the top.
So, Tim, we can give you a call directly?
I do get calls and I do get letters. I cannot possibly respond to all of them, but I'm proud to say that we have a resolution team that works directly for me, who has complete access to me, and who are frankly a lot more well-versed in some of the matters that people are complaining about than I could ever be. But they do a great job, and anybody that does reach out to me will always get a response from one of those folks. And if it gets escalated to me again, I've been known to call a person or two along the way to try and resolve their situation. But it does start at the top, and you have to model that behavior so everybody understands this is what we do.
Who in the early marketing department came up with service with the E-R-I-E? Do you know where that came from? You know the story.
H.O. Hirt?
Really?
Oh, yeah. He was chief marketing officer and chief everything else. Yeah, that was his concoction.
So my brother Tim is here. He told me the story the other day, and I think Father Kriegel has recounted that over the years, the early origins of Erie Insurance came from the Cawley brothers, which had a number of priests, I think 5 at St. Patrick's. What's the story?
Yes, Stephen Cawley of the 5 brothers, yeah, all priests.
Right.
Stephen Cawley was an initial shareholder in Erie Indemnity Company, which is the management company for Erie Insurance Exchange and Erie Insurance. And he passed on his ownership to his nephews. There are at least 2 or 3 generations of nephews that received, and today their families or their heirs have Erie Indemnity Company stock. I don't know whether you know it or not, but the Cawley brothers were very wealthy. Their father was an Irish immigrant and somewhere around Bradford or Olean, and they discovered oil on their property. And so the Priest brothers were very wealthy, and they did a lot for the Erie Catholic Diocese in building buildings and places at various venues in Erie.
So Marty, your role was really the initial HR stages of Erie Insurance. How did that all come about, and how did your job evolve over the many years you were with the company?
Well, Tom knows the whole story, but I'll tell you what I know and he can fill in. The board was after Mr. Hirt for quite some time to establish a personnel function as it was known back then. And as I understand this story, he demurred for quite some time until at one particular board meeting he said, okay, we'll do it, but I get to pick the person. Now, for those of us who knew H.O. Hirt, who else would have picked the person? That general manager meant he was the manager of all things, so that's how I got chosen. And the rest, I guess, is history. I established it with a borrowed desk, found an old the conference room on the second floor, moved in there and set up shop. What guided me was basically having worked with Mr. Hirt those precious 5 years, imbued me with a clear sense of what needed to be done. And at the top of the list was treating people as he wanted them to be treated. And that really became how it started.
I can add to it that it was probably more Bill Hirt and myself agitating with the old man, that's the way we referred to him, that we needed a professional personnel operation. And because Marty was working for him and he knew Marty well, and he knew Marty had some experience in the personnel field at a time when you had left Erie Insurance before you came back, that he said, "Why not Marty?" And we said, "Amen."
You want to say something?
I can't imagine you agitating anybody, Tom.
Another moment from this Chronicle series, courtesy of WQLN, the early years.
H.O. did practice his Lutheran faith, Lutheran Memorial Church on 10th Street, although I will tell you, I've heard the story many times, he always carried things in his pocket that he was working on. And so sometimes during a sermon, he would haul those out and start to do some writing. He was a stickler for detail, a stickler to follow through, a stickler to remain. I'm going to show you something that I've carried with me. I'm 84 years old, and I've carried these in my pocket ever since I started to work for him. Index cards and a pen. Because if I was talking to him and he was saying something, I'd make sure I captured it. I'd write it down. It's a simple task.
Henry Orth Hirt entered the workforce at the ripe old age of 9, during days and summers off from Erie Public School number 13. He worked at his father's shop, which in those days had a storefront at the old Reed House, at the northeast corner of Perry Square along French Street. H.O. branched out into his father's old field. When he wasn't attending the old Erie High on 10th and Sassafras, he worked at Metric Metal. He was more than just a simple timekeeper. H.O. showed a propensity for the arts and sciences, passing the hours by with doodles and sketches.
So, Marty, what's in your wallet? What's in your pocket? Are they there?
I still carry them to this day, a pen and index cards. You know, old habits are hard to break. You know, the wise idea of doing this is that if you want to make a note, rather than try to keep it up here, write it down. Or if you want to give somebody a note, you write it down and give it to them. So it's a very simple thing to do. It's simply a good, I think, a good habit to have.
Tim, the mission of Erie Insurance requires a dedicated staff. It takes a team to be successful in anything. How do you maintain and nurture the Erie Insurance employees?
I tell you, it's becoming more and more challenging the bigger we get. Trying to develop consistency among our leadership. We have over 1,050 people who lead other people in the company, and nearly 7,000 employees. Half of those employees have been with us for 5 years or less. Half of our leaders have been with us for 5 years or less. And culture is what is the kind of the lifeblood of Erie Insurance, that culture of caring, that culture of putting people first, treating people the way that you want to be treated. And imparting that is a big challenge. Last November, we had leaders come to Erie, roughly 350 at a time, over a 3-week period, and put them through a program called the Intentional Leader for an entire week. We had a lot of team building exercises, a lot of role playing, a lot of demonstrating. These are the behaviors that we expect of you as leaders that will sustain our culture. And since then, we've created cohorts of people that meet periodically over luncheons, et cetera. It's not uncommon for me to drop in on one of their team's calls from time to time just to hear the stuff that they're talking about. But we're trying to keep the vibrancy alive of enculturating our people, and that's our key to success. It's made easier with technology, quite frankly. We don't have to bring 1,050 people to Erie once a quarter. We can keep the lines of communication open electronically now, but we are going to institute, or we have instituted, that we are going to have that in-person gathering every other year. So we'll do it again in 2027. We think it's important. We know that the ties that are made face-to-face are really important. we faced great resistance even bringing people back into our offices. But I said, you can watch Mass on TV or you can get up and go to church. Who's more dedicated? And that's the way I feel about it. And frankly, it's a decision that only I could make. And I did it with the company's best interest in mind. Well, the gnashing of teeth is largely over. We'd had very little turnover as a result of our hybrid program that we put in place. And people seem to be genuinely happy to be with each other again. The campus is thriving and vibrant. And downtown, frankly, is benefiting tremendously because we have so many bodies coming down there now.
You are an Erie success story because born and raised here, Little Italy, going to high school and college here, and then devoting your life to Erie Insurance. What motivated you to begin your career at Erie Insurance, and what motivates you today?
I would say it was more happenstance. I'd worked in public accounting for 10 years as an auditor, the guy everybody loves. And then I went to work at Plastic for 4 years in finance there. And it was Chris Marsh who had left Ernst & Young, the firm we worked together at, and went to Erie Insurance when the company went public. They didn't have anybody that understood SEC reporting, and that's what was one of Chris's areas of expertise. So she came to the company and opened up the financial reporting department for the public reporting we now had to do. She called me back in 1995, 96, I guess it was, and said, "Hey, Tim, the head of internal audit position is open. You should apply." And I thought, oh, God, I don't want to go back into auditing again. That's the last thing I want. She said, no. Tim, I tell everybody who will listen to me that you belong at this company. These are your people here. These are our people. So she convinced me to come down and take a look at it. And honestly, it's been a joyous relationship ever since. And not just because I have this job, but along the way, the number of people I've met and the amount of fulfillment that the company has provided for me and for my family. And to be a leader of an organization that is changing people's lives for the better every day. I can't tell you, as we make this 100th anniversary leap, what it feels like to run this organization. I'm bursting with pride. The only regret I have is that my mom isn't here to see it, because she would be shouting from the rooftops how proud she is, and she should be. This is a great organization.
Would you clear up the rumor, though, because I've been told that if you didn't stay at Erie Insurance, you would have opened up your own Italian restaurant. Is there any truth to that? And the Scott family is here, so they're listening.
Yeah, I tried to consult with them on Roma's, but they wouldn't take my advice. No, I at one time had that aspiration, and I've kind of gotten my fill of it at the Italian Festival every August. This year we'll make 14,000 meatballs and 88-quart vats of sauce just for the spaghetti dinner alone. But that is like running a restaurant for a year, but just in one weekend. So I'm good.
Okay, so what's the secret?
I might add that he makes the best pizzelles of anybody anywhere.
Okay, so give us the secret. What is the secret?
The secret to the pizzelles? Yeah. It's a secret.
More from the WQLN series chronicles our thanks to Channel 54 here in Erie. And again, one of the challenges that H.O. Hirt faced. And keep a close eye on the individual in this video.
And so he spent the better part of a couple of years recovering from tuberculosis. And that was before we had antibiotics to help it along. And he's one of the few at the time that survived. Look what happened. He lived to be 95, so there must have been something strong in his constitution.
When he was away living in Texas and then later in Silver City, New Mexico, when he was recovering from tuberculosis, he was always writing home to his mother, to his sisters, so they had a very close bond. And he returned to Erie. He was feeling pretty good, ready to start kind of working again, did a few odd jobs, and then went to work for a failing grocery store, and he completely turned the grocery store around. Profits rose within like his first week of working there. He had the shelves all restocked, money in the bank. People were getting paid, vendors were getting paid, and that was really kind of an incredible experience for him, and he did very well at it, and he was a great salesman, and that's, I think, what contributed to his success in Erie Insurance.
Now, if you were watching closely, do you want to finish the rest of the story? What are you wearing today?
Well, if you notice, I have the same shirt and tie on, a jacket. that
You
I had
planned
in
that,
that
right?
video. I had no idea this morning that I was putting on the same thing. So there must be something going on out there that is influencing me.
But I recall with your late wife, Sue Hirt, and Sarah is here today, when I was a local reporter, first learning about H.O. Hirt. What was he like as a man?
Well, he was a very intense person. He took on anything that he got interested in, he would be intense about. And sometimes people would mistake that for maybe anger or something like that. But really, he was a soft touch beneath that veneer. He was generous, without question. And he really cared about humanity and having people have a better life. There was no question about it. He was a remarkable person, that he had no experience whatsoever running an insurance company, never had set foot in an insurance company, and he started his own company. And as he said, at the time of our 40th anniversary, he talked about the two founders, O.G. Crawford and himself, and he referred to O.G. Crawford as the father and he as the mother. And indeed, he was the nurturing mother that brought about the development of Erie Insurance. I often think that we are so fortunate in having our founders' influence over 50 years. Now, probably management experts today would say nobody should hang around for 50 years running a company. But in our case, he put an indelible touch on our values. They were values he learned growing up in Erie. And those values really boil down to the golden rule of treating others as you would like to be treated. And those values have stuck with our management team. And Tim referred to the fact that, 40% or 50%? 50% of our employees have been with us less than 5 years. The fact that our management too, but they are imbued with the service philosophy and of treating the way they treat people. And that will now be passed on to this next generation that's coming in that have been with us less than 5 years.
I would say we're very fortunate to have the founding family still present at the helm. It makes a huge difference. And, you know, I often find myself wondering what would H.O. do in this situation, like when COVID broke out. And there's a lot of strength in the wisdom that he imparted on us. And it's really not that hard to carry it out, to be honest with you. I mean, if you put people first, that's the answer. And how can you take care of people?
But you say that, in Marty, I work for an industry that is being taken up by a lot of big corporations, big mergers, and yet Erie Insurance is in Erie. I could not imagine Erie Insurance not being in Erie, but there was a moment where it potentially moved away. Let's watch.
After dealing with these early crises, a third appeared on the horizon. Some personnel troubles had the board of directors considering the worst: selling the Erie. Behind the scenes, one of the directors conspired to get himself elected president of the Erie, as the current president, William Flynn, was stepping down. Concerned about this director's behavior, O.G. and H.O. convinced the rest of the board to instead elect William McCain to the presidency, and he successfully kept the company in Erie and with its founders until Hirt himself became president in 1931.
They did have an offer to sell for a decent profit, but they chose not to. And I'm sure there have been many times over the years where the company has had the opportunity to move the headquarters out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and to go to Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. But that was never really an option for us. This is a homegrown business in Erie, and it's going to stay here.
So the backstory in all of this, what happened and how did you maintain Erie Insurance, Marty Eisert, that stayed in Erie?
Well, H.O. was very committed to Erie, and there was never any thought in his mind of it moving elsewhere. He was committed not just to the company, but in a very quiet way, had helped out other organizations in Erie, private people, never for fame. And Tom knows a lot of those stories going way back that we would not have the time to delve into right now. But I would say it's his remarkable commitment to Erie. There was never any thought in his mind of going anywhere else.
And your commitment, obviously, Tim, to not only downtown Erie, but to the community at large is evident. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I think back to 10 years ago and some of the decline that we were seeing in the city. The city underwent a planning process, and the Erie Refocus Plan was issued. The county had a planning process. The Emerge 2040 plan was issued. There was a downtown improvement plan. A number of the neighborhood organizations had developed plans. We had more plans than you could shake a stick at, but no one really could figure out how to execute them. And so I didn't know either. I mean, I was not civically engaged at that point when I first came into this role. And so I like learning through people, and I like stealing good ideas. So we visited a number of different cities, predominantly Cincinnati. It was the model that we ended up adopting to undertake this development work. And the model is pretty straightforward. It's basically you get organizations that are interested in and have the wherewithal to invest, long-term invest in the city, and bring them together. And we were able to raise a fund of about $28 million, which was raised with no complete transparency, I guess I'll say. We told everybody that invested in the fund, do not expect to get this money back. This is your investment in your city. And you can decline to do it, but basically you're sealing our doom. And so many organizations stepped up, came in, and that money has been deployed now. And I'm happy to say, I mean, the litmus test that we thought about in the early days in 2016, 2017 was, if we start seeing outside investment occur in Erie, we'll know that we're turning the corner. And that's exactly what we've seen. Our investments as a company and through the Erie Downtown Development Corporation has brought in developers from California, New York, from central Pennsylvania to handle the revitalization of 10th and State Street, the Avalon Hotel, and the Renaissance Building, and then downtown further, the Modern Tool Building. All three of those are owned by outside parties who are investing heavily in each of those properties. So it's not over. There's still an awful lot of work to do, but we felt compelled to lean in. And this guy was, he told me when I first got the job, he goes, I know this is going to be a hard job. You got to get your arms around. That'll give you some time, but we got to get active in the community. About a month later, I'm in Harrisburg with him, and we're off to the races. But it was a good thing. I've learned a ton from Tom. I've learned a ton from a lot of people, but Tom predominantly. I mean, I never feel like I did this. I know that I've been very actively doing a lot of things, but getting it going was really the hardest part. And I knew whenever I was talking to somebody to try and get them involved, that Tom was behind me and they could see him. Now, he may not have been there, but they knew that Tom was backing what we were trying to get done, and that his influence was instrumental in getting this thing off center.
So, Tom, I have to ask you, what motivates you to do what you do? Because you could be retired, you could be relaxing at your age, you have the resources and time to do that. That is not in your DNA. And so, with all due respect, what motivates Tom Hagen to give back every day your time, your resources, your energy, your vision, your passion of history, and above all, your love of this community?
Well, I really don't know, but two things. One is that H.O. Hirt was a really good role model and teacher for me. And I just embraced that, and I've been living with that for so many years that it's second nature. And I guess the other thing is I enjoy doing it. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you might as well go someplace else and do something else. And it's fun to do it, and it's fun to, and it's encouraging to see the response that we get from that. So I guess those would be the reasons I do those.
But when you drive down 6th Street, it has got to give you such reward to say, look at what we are doing. Not you, you're part of it, but it's a community effort that you have told me in the past.
Well, it is, and I've got a great team working with me with architect Jeff Kidder and Mike Jeffries in construction, and my old pal from Erie Insurance who retired there after 38 years, Mike Glass, who was our, there he is.
You can stand up. Thank you.
Who was very much involved in construction management for all that time at Erie Insurance. So those things all come together. But I guess number one is you have to enjoy what you're doing. And quite frankly, as you get older, you got to keep moving. You can't just sit, or you're going to be sitting in a casket.
Well, at your age, you're going to be here for the 200th celebration of Erie Insurance at the rate you're going. Tim, you want to say something?
I just want to say Mike got to retire for all of about 2 weeks before Tom scooped him up, made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So,
Before you leave that about Tom, and I don't wish to embarrass him, but when we're going through that massive amount of change, the transition from H.O. Hirt, a one-man organization, and what we're trying to create as a true organization, what I call the we-ness of it, it was Tom had the vision, and doing all that change, particularly in a compacted period of time, there's a lot of resistance. Nothing personal, but it's the nature of change when you try to bring it about. Tom was always there quietly, certainly from a human resources perspective and the changes that we were trying to make. He was there guiding it and always giving us, he had our back. And we got through it marvelously well, but we owe an awful lot to Tom for what the organization is today, back then and even now.
you know, I got to say, there are very few people I can say this about, but if I call Tom Hagen, it's almost never happened that I've gotten his voicemail. He may not be able to talk to me right then, but he answers the phone. He says, "Hello, can I call you back? Or can you call me back at this time?" And within, typically within an hour, I have access to him. And I can't tell you how valuable that is. There are times, you run an organization like this, you're going to run into stuff you've never seen before. There's very little he hasn't seen before. And so to be able to get him on the phone at a moment's notice and be able to decide things in real time is a big plus. And he operates that way with everybody. I would venture to guess Mike Glass would tell you the same thing about Tom. It's remarkable that at almost 90 years of age, like if I ever feel like I'm exhausted, I'm like, shut up, dude. Like, look at this guy,
So, Tim, I had the chance to be at Gannon over the weekend. Your name came up a couple of times because the message you had told to students in the past obviously resonated. And the message was, if you don't like things in your community, don't sit around and complain. Do something about it. Stand up. And where's Andy Roth? Is Andy here? Andy Roth? There you are. Stand up, please. I'm going to use your words from a book that he is working on and giving you full credit when it comes to leadership. Number one, and Tim, I want your reaction to this. Number one, nothing happens unless someone makes it happen. Number two, no one person can do it alone. It takes a team. Number three, you accomplish more if you don't care who gets the credit, something that Harry Truman said many years ago. And number four, a successful leader is a risk taker. Can you address that?
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. I stuck the company's neck out in helping Erie Downtown Development Corporation get started. It was a big risk amid a tidal wave of people that said, this will never work in Erie. But we did it, and we did take that risk. And nothing happens unless somebody takes a move. And I can say I was among the first people to make a move. Mike Batchelor and I, Tom, Tina Donikowski, and Pierre McCormick kind of hatched this plan back in 2016. But what we quickly found out was that Erie was lacking coalitions. A lot of people were independently operating Governor Wolf told us that Harrisburg, he goes, I love Erie, Tim. We want to help, but we're dying the death of 1,000 cuts. We get calls from all kinds of people here. No one's on the same page. You got to bring this together. That's what I've worked very hard to do, is to unify and galvanize different groups of people, extending beyond what your role is to help to take it more of a community focus. And that engagement of different people around the table at the right time to get things done and speaking with a single voice in places like Harrisburg and DC is why we've been able to make the progress we've made. And it's a challenge because some of those participants are public officials who are elected, and they may not be there after the next after their 4-year term. And so there creates a new tidal wave of disruption that we need to work through. But I think we're getting better at it. I think we understand who the proper players are to be at the table and to be consulted with. And I think it's something that we have to continue to invest in.
And Tom and Marty, I think I know the answer to this, but the original office of Erie Insurance, the replica of Independence Hall, I assume H.O. Hirt was behind that as well.
Well, it's not our original office. Actually, we started at 10th and State Street in 1925. In 1938, we bought our first home office building, which was the old C.F. Adams building at 6th and French Street, which today is our Erie Insurance Heritage Center. But what was the rest of the question?
So the office that is a replica of Independence Hall.
Well, it's inspired by is the way to describe it, because it's considerably longer than Independence Hall. But when H.O. always envisioned having a building like that, and when he interviewed the architects, Nelson, Goldberg, and Height, they had never visited Independence Hall. So he sent them down to, H.O. sent them down to Philadelphia to look at it. And they lucked out because when the building was built, there were no architectural plans. It was all built by master carpenters and masons. But what they found out was that during the Depression days, out-of-work architects were put to work making as-built drawings. So they had drawings of Independence Hall, and what they were able to do is to pick out the detail of the quoins and the brickwork and whatever else. So it made their job a lot easier. But nonetheless, I always say that H.O. Hirt was the master architect of that building.
And then, Tim, the Tom Hagen wing is completed, and then COVID hits. How did you deal with that?
It was hard. I got to say, a couple things. I would go into the office sometimes after COVID started, and I distinctly remember one day there was spring had broken, and the grounds crews did what they do, and the campus looked beautiful. And I walked around the campus, and I walked through the Perry Square building, which was not under construction at the time. And I remember I had a pair of new Tacoba boots on, and they had hard heels, and they were my footprints were resonating in the huge atrium there, and the sense of emptiness was unbelievable. And it kind of made me emotional, like how sad this is. It's like a bomb has gone off and everybody is gone. When the building was completed during COVID, we knew it was going to be a process to get people back into the building. We first started in late 21 by inviting people or late 22 it was, inviting people to come back on a voluntary basis, and they did. We had a ribbon cutting toward the end of COVID. Governor Wolf was here for that. It was a very nice event. The building today is like a city. There are roughly 2,800 employees in the building. There's all kinds of open spaces for people to collaborate.
It's beautiful.
It is a great complex. I think it was part of the formula that stopped people from protesting about having to come back to the office. Because if you're complaining about going to that building, there's something wrong with you. We have our docents here. Some of our retirees are docents. They give tours of the building, and if you ever have an opportunity, it's a great thing to see.
And you've done a great job with the Chronicle series, so thank you for that. Let's bring H.O. Hirt's voice into the conversation. This again from WQLN as he talks about the golden rule, service, and really the mission that continues based on his philosophy. Let's watch.
We get thousands of complimentary letters, which I don't even bother to read because they can do no harm. We're proud to file them and show the vast number of filing cabinet drawers that we have jam-packed with them, but they can do no harm. But every complaint is investigated by me and answered. And if there was just cause for the complaint, we certainly do everything in our power to make amends. But many times we find that the complaint is not well-founded.
There were times when I would pick him up. He'd come out with a sheaf of papers from a weekend and say, we need to look into these when we get to the office. They were people who had called him at home with a complaint or inquiry or what happened, and we would look into them when I got to the office. So service was very key to him, and that never changed. Woe be gone to the person who didn't give service. So that didn't change.
He was the one who took it on and used it as a teaching moment. He would reprint in bulletins if he got a letter with a complaint, and he would say, okay, here's where we may have misstepped, and how could we improve the service? And he would reach out to policyholders and want to retain their business.
The insurance industry is a service industry. And anyone that enters the industry, especially as a salesman, who doesn't have that thought well grounded in his mind, is not likely to be a success.
You could see the intensity in
Yes.
that clip, and you didn't want that intensity against you if you did something wrong. Believe me.
I would offer this, if I may.
Please.
Tom talks about it being intensity. There was no idle chit-chat with him. When he had something to say, he would say it. And he had something to ask you, he would ask it. And he expected an answer that was worthy of answering his question. There was no idle chit-chat with him. It was very purposeful behavior all the time.
If I could just say Marty's relationship here, I'm so delighted that he's joined us. I was recruited to be HO's assistant when I was in the Navy. I actually was considering a Navy career, and HO persuaded me because I had worked at the company 4 years before the Navy as a part-time file clerk and underwriter and gopher, but he really convinced me with his selling ability to come back and be his assistant, and I was for 12 years. And I was moving on to doing other things in the company, and HO personally selected Marty, whom he knew as an underwriter. And so Marty succeeded me, but he had a little different relationship because I was HO's son-in-law, and I had that kind of a family relationship, and Marty had more of a business relationship, but I think it's something that he would never trade for anything.
Tim, so my family have been Erie Insurance customers for 79 years. Very happy with it. How do you, though, maintain that service while also meeting the shareholders, making a profit?
Yeah, that's that tricky landscape I was describing earlier. It's really putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, and the customer could be our employee or our agent or actual policyholder customer. But what are we trying to accomplish with them? How do they want it to be? And finding that and being able to programmatically deliver service in that way. And we have found sometimes we have very complex processes that are driven by laws and regulations. But if we can just make it simple for people to do things with us, whether they're employees or customers or agents, that we find that the satisfaction levels go way up and cycle times go down. So we're able to simultaneously find solutions that are delightful to use, as delightful as insurance could be, and being able to drive cost out of the operation at the same time.
I have one more clip from this Chronicle series, and it's the passing of the torch as H.O. Hirt retired 50 years ago. And Marty, you're in this. Again, thanks to WQLN. Let's watch the monitors.
I remember going up to visit him a few months afterwards, and he seemed to have become more relaxed, more wistful. He probably was pushing himself towards the end. And he knew when to go out, and he went out on his own terms and with style.
When H.O. retired as the CEO and he passed the helm to his son, Bill Hirt, he left him a note. It's probably my favorite H.O. quote, which is, "Never lose the human touch." And it's something that I think about every day. And it's such a sort of simple sentiment, but it just, again, describes his character and the way that he wanted the company and the business handled going forward after his retirement. Never lose the human touch. This is a relationship business. This is a business that cares about people. And you can't lose the human touch, or you've sort of lost your path and deviated from the principles and the mission of the company.
So Marty, pick up on that point, and how difficult or easy was it for him to walk away from this company that he founded a century ago?
I've often wondered that many times. People don't know that when he came in the morning, he never took a lunch hour. He worked straight through until a little bit before 5, then he would leave early so that he could beat the traffic, but he would be
Traffic
there.
in Erie?
Well, there was traffic, and he let's say he didn't do too well in traffic. I could tell you some stories about that, too.
Well, you got to pause there. What do you mean? Go ahead, tell the story.
Well, I learned to go through traffic lights. I was taking him home one night. We got to 7th and French Street, and there was a red light. And I had a little Datsun beat-up station wagon. I see him going this way in the driver's seat, and I'm watching him. He didn't say anything, so I just went through the traffic light. He didn't like to stop for traffic lights. Well, that turned out to be our ritual. A lot of times going home, I'd see him going like this here. Okay, we just go through traffic lights. And so we did a lot of that. But to answer your question, I think he knew it was time. I suspect he did. I do not know that, but it must have been very difficult for him. I'll end with this. I visited him a couple times in 2 years afterwards, and he was quite mellow, quite different, quite relaxed, altogether a different person than what I had worked with.
So we have some questions from the audience. Thank you for this. One of them is pointing out Quaker State and Pennzoil leaving Oil City and the commitment that Erie has in a community that is still struggling to stay in Erie. Tim?
Yeah, I think, I mentioned Cincinnati earlier. There were about a dozen Fortune 500 companies headquartered there, Kroger and Fifth Third Bank, et cetera, all of whom came together forming their Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation. And we find stories like this everywhere. It takes corporate participation in community rebuilding is vital. No one sector can do it all. Philanthropy, it can't be sustainable. Public sector support is not consistent. The private sector really, to me, has been the key to this, in lining organizations up who are willing to take the risk and who understand that this is a long-term proposition. This is not a overnight success and big returns tomorrow. It's something we have to remain committed to. And frankly, I'll tell you that our customers and our agents and our employees value the work that we're doing. It's attractive to them. We have young people come and interview for jobs. They are astounded at the stuff that we do as an organization, and they want to become part of it. Our team, many of our team members who are community facing are here in the audience today. I would like to ask them for a round of applause. They have done an amazing job.
I would imagine, Tim, and again, I've had Erie Insurance since my wife and I were first married. We've stayed with you forever. I would imagine if you start with Erie Insurance, you're going to stay with Erie Insurance. Is that a fair assessment?
It is. As we raise rates, our retention rates fall down a bit. And that's,
Wait, your rates are going up?
Hopefully not much more, but they've gone up a lot over the last couple of years, trying to keep up with inflation. Building costs, cost to repair cars, duration of time it takes to get parts in means cars are off the road longer, rental periods are longer. So all those things factor into our rate making. But in a normal time, we retain between 91 and 92% of our business every year. About 5% of the business we wanted to lose. And then the rest of it is people that shop in defect. It's higher than USAA's retention rate, which is unbelievable. It's a strong source of pride. It's a big component of our business model. It's a lot easier to rewrite or write a renewal policy, a lot less expensive to do that than it is to go and harvest a new piece of business. And new business is less profitable than long-standing business, and our policyholders on average stay with us for about 13 years, which is remarkable.
I can attest to that. For any of you, this is another question, the animosity towards the insurance industry and how Erie Insurance is dealing with that. Do any one of you want to address that?
I can talk about that for a day or two. There are things like organizations have cropped up that will finance litigation, so enabling somebody to not have to pay a penny to sue an insurance company. And so they're catching people with bodily injuries and things like that. And I'd be the first one to tell you that there are companies in my industry that are not as reputable as we are, and some of this is deserved. But what happens is we get painted with a broad brush, and we have never, to my knowledge, willingly denied a claim that we owed money on or paid less than what we owed. That's exactly how we operate this business. And that's why we say people are first, profits are second. And that's always been the case. It's what HO demonstrated for us. But it's unfortunate. Things like that, things like, many people feel like insurance is a saving policy. Like this is a savings account. So when something happens, I'm going to get my money back from the insurance company. Well, that's not the way it works. It's not a maintenance policy. It's intended to help you recover when you have a severe loss. And many people are looking to get their money back from us. It's a weird time. Also, with the amount of mental health issues that are going on right now, claimants they go from level-headed to extremely mad in seconds, and it's imperiling our claims adjusters that are out there trying to do their job. If they have to deny a claim, sometimes they're physically threatened, and so we've had to train the claims force on how to disarm situations and how to evacuate when the time when they know the time is right. But that's the state of affairs. It's unfortunate.
Tom, this is another question, and you mentioned this earlier with the marketing. How does Erie Insurance compete with the mass marketing of the other major national insurance providers? We won't mention any names.
Well, that's an interesting question because back early, in the very early days, the late Ed Nick, who was on our board of directors, actually, he was director number one. He asked HO when we were in a difficult situation, Orth, how are you going to compete with all of those big companies out there, the INAs of the world? And HO said, Mr. Nick, you don't understand. We are the competition. And so that is the attitude that we have carried forward about our competitive position. But going back for just a minute at what Tim was talking about as far as the pressures from society, from legislators and politicians, we've had that for quite a long time, even going back when HO was in the saddle. And I remember one time there was a problem with insurance companies canceling midterm. And it got to be a nationwide problem, and the Senate Antitrust Subcommittee, under the direction of Senator Hart, had a hearing in Washington. And our National Trade Association asked H.O. Hirt to go there and talk because we took a little different road on that. We did not cancel in midterm, unless there was a real cause for something, somebody committed murder or something of that sort. But anyways, so H.O. went down there, and he proceeded in telling the federal government that they ran the federal hail and crop insurance program, and they were canceling people midterm in that program. And he always had a magnifying glass in his later years, and he took the magnifying glass out and went like this. Naughty, naughty Uncle Sam, he said at that hearing. And it's recorded in the minutes of that hearing. And I had a few friends that were in the audience that said, that was the highlight of the hearing.
Tim, this is another question from somebody who's been an Erie Insurance customer for over 40 years. I can vouch for service when my house had a major leak, and praising the adjuster that came to this home to deal with that. So just talk a moment about the role that these people have on the front lines, visiting the house fire or inspecting the car damage or traveling to Kentucky or North Carolina and witnessing the horrific damages of these storms.
Yeah, we, HO coined the term ambassadors of goodwill. He said our claims adjusters are the ambassadors of goodwill. When they arrive, they should take care of the situation, and that philosophy is carried through to today. When we hire claims people from the outside that are working at other companies, I can't tell you how many of them tell me we visit every branch office every year. So when I get out there, I'll talk to 100 or so claims adjusters in each one of the territories, and many of them are new. And they said, we really thought this was kind of a bunch of slogans you guys were telling us during the interview. We heard you were a good company, but we had no idea what you guys are really like. And they are just, the happiest employees we have are the newer ones who've come from other organizations. The least satisfied employees are the ones that have never worked anywhere else and have been at the company for a long time. So we're trying to reverse that narrative a bit, but it comes through in every survey we go through. But when you've worked somewhere else, like I had worked for 14 years before I came to the company, I knew what I had from the day I walked in the door, and I hope that all companies invest in their employees like we do. I think it's really an important thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. It's what HO would have us do.
So, Marty, I can say this as somebody who was born and raised in Erie, have left. I'm thrilled to be back anytime I can, but often the biggest critics of this community are the Erie residents themselves. People who come from outside of Erie say, wow, this is an incredible community with natural resources and beauty. What do you say to that, right or wrong?
Well, very definitely, Bob Maz, and I can go back to our days on the Erie Chamber of Commerce working with Don DePlacido. And one of the things we ran into is that when people were coming into Erie to be interviewed, not just by us, but by other organizations as well, and they were met by the airport by a taxi cab driver. Difficult question is, what are you doing in Erie? The taxi cab driver would ask, and they say, interview, well, why would you want to live here? Remember those days, Bob? We had such a difficult time, and we come to find out in our survey that most of the people who lived in Erie had never been anywhere else. And so they tended to look at it, I suppose like the employees at Erie Insurance, that somehow it's different out there, it's better out there. And we developed a quality of life campaign to try to turn it around. Led to a lot of other programs in Erie, but that was the biggest issue we faced. Now, I think it's changing because we had that whole generation or couple generations die out. Thanks to Erie Insurance and other companies, we've had newer people moving in to take higher level jobs, and all jobs, but the higher level jobs get involved in the community and change that. And we still need to change some more, but at least we're making some progress in that regard.
And Tom, you have been so supportive of this organization, which again, if you're going to create change, nobody's going to come in and swoop in and make that change. It has to come from within, which is what the Jefferson is all about, now more than 15 years old and growing. So how do you address that issue? Creating change, what this organization is doing, but what the city, what leaders, what citizens need to do for the future?
Well, I think we're on the right path now, and of course the Jefferson has made an amazing impact on the city and bringing speakers in, and for Erie people realizing that we have something here. Speakers come in oftentimes, have never been here, and they marvel at what we have with the peninsula and the bay and the diversified industry that we do have. And the cultural things. You know, we talk about the Warner Theater as being the showplace of Erie. Well, with the changes that have been made there, the infrastructure changes, it's a showplace of the United States. There's no question about it. So I think we're getting more and more reinforcement in more recent years of what Erie is and the good place it is, particularly to raise a family. I remember many, many years ago, and a lot of you in the audience do too, there was a member of the Erie School Board on national television that quoted that little ditty about Drury. And that was just one of the darkest times in Erie, to have somebody do that. But I see it changing, and you don't hear that kind of talk so much anymore, hardly at all. So I think we're on the right track.
And for you, Tim, as you lead this company and you talk to your counterparts at other corporations around the country, Fortune 500 companies, and how lucky Erie is to have, what do they tell you about best practices in terms of leadership and running the company that you're running so successfully?
Yeah, I mean, most of my peers that I network with, I'd say most of our discussion is more about issues in the industry. We talk about leadership style, and I think that I've invited many of them to come and visit here, and we spend time together. I think that there's a common understanding among us that it starts with people, and that's what they talk about, is investing in your people. What kind of programs do you have to invest in your people? More often than not, they marvel at the things we do offer our people, like the fact that we have a 401k plan and a pension plan, the fact that we pay roughly 93% of the healthcare costs for our employees. We have a learning and development program. We basically have a college inside of our company for people to develop their talents and skills and progress throughout their career. My wife was a 36-year veteran of the company, made VP, and came to Erie 2 months after she graduated from East High. Never went to college at all. So I think that we all talk about creating opportunities and making sure that our cultures remain intact. And not everybody has cultures like ours. It's quite a bit different 100 miles west of here. The company is very successful, very loud, very boastful, and I wouldn't put them among the greatest places to work, though.
I don't want to get into politics, but if you could give a message to Washington in these times with perhaps an agreement now with China on trade, but there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of churning, we have a national debt, we have a very polarized country, we have a divided media. From your standpoint and your perch in Erie, what would you tell the leaders in Washington?
I would say you've proven your point. You can disrupt things. Now let's move on and let's get back to being the United States.
Marty?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's going to take us a long recovery time. We're not even into the recovery with the divisiveness that's going on, and I fear that we've only are seeing the beginning of it. And I think it's going to be destructive. How it's going to play out in the long run, I don't know, but it's a real concern. It should be a concern to all of us, not only in business, but the private citizen as well.
Tom, you are a student of history. Who's your favorite historical figure? If you could pick one. I know that's like saying, who's your favorite daughter? Well, we know that's Sarah, but anyhow.
Boy, I haven't really thought about that. Historical figure. Well, I think one that is, who was a real Renaissance man was Benjamin Franklin. He had his flaws, but he enjoyed life and he contributed tremendously to this country and to France as well. So I guess I would say that person.
And then finally, I'm going to give each of you a chance to have a final thought. But my final question is your message to the people who are gathered here. These are some of the leaders of this community, entrepreneurs and developers and elected officials. Marty, we'll begin with you. What is your message to the people here moving forward about Erie Insurance, about the commitment it's had to this community, and about our future?
I would quote H.O. Hirt, not so much in words, but certainly in his influence on me, which was always to be positive, see the possibilities, and never even think for 1 minute about failure.
Tim?
Yeah, I think you said this earlier, Steve, but I would say if you're not happy about something here, do something about it. Get up out of bed, stop sitting watching the local news and complaining about everything. If you don't do anything, nothing changes. So if something is a real problem, rather than clobber the city over the head about it, get up and be part of the solution.
And 30 years later, you'll still get up excited to go to the office to do your job?
Some days are better than others. No, I'm kidding. I do. I mean, I can't, I honestly, I think about, retiring, and I'm like, I'm not done yet. I enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm in good health, and I've got great support, and it's a great company. It's too early to go. I'm enjoying it. So.
And we'll see you at the Italian Festival again this year?
You will, August 11th, 12th, and 13th, for those of you.
And the Pizzelli's, the secret is?
The Pizzelle secret is make them real crisp. And so it's baking soda, or baking powder is the secret to really good pizzelles.
See, we got it out of him.
So,
Tom, we'll give you the last word.
He has a secret sauce in that, I can tell you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. This is a great crowd, much more than I anticipated, and we really appreciate you turning out to listen to us talk about the company that we love and the community that we love. And we're here to, and going to continue to do all we can to make this a better place for our children, our grandchildren, and your grandchildren and your children. So thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting Erie, and I hope many of you Erie Insurance.
Well, we have to thank the three of you because we are here today, and Erie is, as I said at the outset, a far better community because of your commitment. It would not be the city it is today without you three. I want to thank the Ferkey, where's Dr. Ferrardi, and the entire staff here at the Jefferson. He's all the way in the back. Thank you all to the Jefferson staff for making this possible today on your first 100 years and the work that we're doing here at the Jefferson. We'll stick around and shake hands and talk to you afterwards, but thank you for spending part of your day here. Appreciate it.